Now let's look at our statistical software output. All the information you see here, we already completed the entire exercise before this video. Now we're just looking at it like, where did I get the information? In R, we made it to where group 1 was young professionals, and then group 2 was mature professionals. And so these are the numbers we saw earlier. Our n would be the sample size, so same numbers there. We saw the mean, and then median, we don't typically use that, so we won't worry about that. And then here's the standard deviation, and then standard error, we're not going to worry about that either. And then when we run the independent samples t-test, this is what we get. You have a student's t and a Welch's t. And for the independent samples t-test, where we compare means, we're just interested right now in the student's t. So don't worry about this bottom row here. And again, right, you saw this, our t statistic was 3.38. Our degrees of freedom was 448. And then we saw that the difference between the sample was 0.82. And then here's our confidence interval. So let's connect these. So here's the t statistic. And then we have the p-value, which I didn't talk about, but the p-value is calculated for us to where this is the second way to determine whether the t is large or small. So remember, looking at a table, the cutoff was plus minus 1.96. Well, using statistical software, we see that if the p-value is small, below our alpha, then we reject it. And in this case, our alpha is 0.05, so 0.0008 is smaller, so or lower, so we reject the null hypothesis. Okay, let me finish creating my arrows here. The difference between means in the sample would be this minus 0.82. And then the difference between the means and the population would be the confidence interval here. Here's another example. A company that sells outdoor clothing and equipment wants to identify factors associated with customer returns. In this analysis, the product return rate for customers with and without store loyalty cards will be compared. So our research question is, do customers with and without loyalty cards have the same product return rate? So our null hypothesis would state that in the population, the product return rate does not differ between customers with and without store loyalty cards. And then our alternative hypothesis would say it does differ between customers with and without store loyalty cards. And then here is our output from 2,000 randomly chosen customers. Group 0 would be not a loyalty card holder. 1 is a loyalty card holder. So we have our sample size, our mean, and standard deviation. So in the sample, what's the return rate in the sample for those without a loyalty card? So that would be group 0. Well, their return rate would be this right here. It's a percentage, so it's 18.09%. And then for those with a loyalty card, it would be 14.69%. Looking at our independent samples t-test, we're just concerned about the student's t. So our t statistic would be 2.119221, but really we just can jump to the p-value where it's 0.0341. So in this case, it's lower than our alpha, which is 0.05. So we are going to reject the null hypothesis. And what's the difference in return rate between the two groups in the sample? Well, it's right here. So let's just put an arrow right there. And then our confidence interval in the population, what's the difference? Well, it's going to be the confidence interval. So that would be these two numbers here between that and that. And since we're reporting to our manager, we want to communicate exactly what we found in a way that they can understand. The return rate is higher. So remember, when we reject the null hypothesis when comparing means, we always go back to the means. And in this case, we saw that group 0 has a higher rate of return, right? So that's what we're going to communicate. The return rate is higher for non-card holders. The return rate for non-card holders may be as low as 0.25% to as high as 6.54%. So these numbers, right? Compared to those with loyalty cards. So something like that. Now let's summarize. And I'm not going to go over this closely because we're going to run another complete example and we're going to talk about these items here. So let's do that in the next video.